Hello everyone, it is me, Andrei Targaev, here with you. I'm gonna explain you how to upload your texture into an Archicad project and to create your own covering. Also, alongside with that, I'll try to tell you about all basic nuances while working with coverings when setting up your own textures. So you have an item. Let's assume you would like to put a brickwork texture onto this cube. First, you obviously go and open a surface painting panel window, since it is the most convenient to work with coverings using this panel. And there, you type brickwork, look for standard textures present in a project, and using that tool, you paint our morph. There, we can select modes. Those are painting of a face or painting of the entire item. In the case with the morph, you can paint only one face at a time. If you would like to fill up the entire item with a texture, you should go to its properties and set there replacement of coverings. Let's assume we have selected white natural brickwork and we apply changes to the specific ones. So let's take a closer look onto our item. What shall we pay attention to? I placed purposely the item at the origin of axes. If we look at the floor plan, I have this cube placed with one of its edges on 0, 0 coordinate. We can see that absolutely all the Archicad default textures originate in that coordinate. In other words, suppose if I am going to move the floor base, standing in my case under the cube, towards to any side, then I have the item itself moving, but the texture remains anchored to it. How to anchor the texture to the very beginning of an item I'm going to demonstrate a little bit later. And now, let's create a new covering. In order to do that, we can open any covering from this panel by clicking twice and click New. And we are going as a first step to create a brickwork texture. Type in a name you wish. In my case, that will be the brown brickwork. And we can either copy item or create new from the library or change setting from the library. Since I'm creating a new item, I just use copy item and I'm going to change its settings. Click OK. Have a look onto the coverings panel. There we have several options: Sign Render and a 3D OpenGL displaying mechanism. They are linked to each other. First of all, we shall delete existing texture in the OpenGL displaying mechanism. After that, we use a browser to look for a texture of your interest. I'm not going to focus on services you can download a texture from, because you can search for the one you need. And there we have a seamless texture of brown brickwork. Let's have a look onto the first one. Open link in a new tab and have a look onto the third one. If we have a closer look, we may see the texture is first a little bit convex and it is not trimmed evenly at all the sides. In other words, if we have this texture repeated, having the first and the last rows in vertical direction cut in half, we will have all that looking cheesy. And the same situation we have on the left and the right sides. Let us say, here we have a full brick, and after it goes a half brick. Certainly, that is not what we're gonna like. Of course, we can use Photoshop to correct it a little. But there is no need to waste time for that, as it's possible to download a seamless one right off. We go to the second picture. There we can see that everything is alright. The row begins evenly. Also, the half bricks there are trimmed accurately. Download that texture. Right-click Save Picture As. And I'm saving it on the desktop. Then we go to the Archicad. Here we click Search, download other picture from the Open File box. Select our picture. It is saved into the embedded library. Then we press OK. Then we have to scale this texture up. I suggest in the case of a brickwork to untick Save Initial Proportion. And now we have to figure out the number of rows in vertical and in horizontal direction. Having counted the number of the rows in the horizontal direction, we multiply that by 260. That is the size of a brick with the count of the seam. And the number of the rows in the vertical direction, we multiply by 75. We obtain the value of 1300, that is the width, and 1350 is the height. Go back to covering settings, and we have to type the obtained numbers in the settings of the texture itself. Here we introduce our computed values, 1300 and 1350. Then we have to go to the 3D displaying mechanism, to the Sign Render by McCon mechanism, and we have to correlate settings. Click this particular button and select Update Sign Render Parameters from the internal mechanism. The texture will be uploaded automatically here, so you can use it now for visual representation. Press OK. And now select this covering for our cube. Press Ctrl+T and select our created covering, Brickwork Brown 01. Now let's talk about anchoring of our texture in a 3D space. In the case with a morph, it sticks automatically to the beginning of an item. In other words, if I move the cube, the texture will not be displaced along our item. In case with a wall, for example, and with other items, with exception of a morph, the situation is different. That means I move the item and the texture remains in place. In other words, it is not anchored. How to set up the 3D anchoring of a texture? First, we select a morph. Click Document, Visualization, Anchoring of 3D Texture. Here we can set initial point of a texture and a direction. In order to set a direction, we select this function and click on that corner, where the development of a texture shall begin from. Let's say I have selected this corner. We may see the texture has changed its anchoring point. In order to set a direction, we click Document, Visualization, and select Set Direction. Click on the necessary edge, and here we have two options: Define angle graphically or define angle manually. In the latter case, you can type in the angle you need. Otherwise, you can draw it graphically. Let's click OK and set a direction. For illustration purposes, let's take the angle of 45 degrees. Our texture has changed its direction. Moreover, it has changed the direction in the case of the morph only on the edge I selected. In the case of a wall, the situation is the same. We select our item, then Document, Visualization, set the beginning point, and for example, we set it here. The texture has changed its anchoring point. A direction of a texture is set similarly via Document, Anchoring, Set Direction. Draw the direction of our texture. Also, I would advise to explore first the standard library before creating your own covering. Say, let's change the covering of this concrete. Double-click on concrete, click the button New, change setting from the library. So this covering with its name we are going to change for a covering from the standard library. Go to the link Archicad-20 library, and here we see a lot of folders. Here we have a certain number of coverings. They are arranged by themes. Actually, the library is quite abundant for standard purposes. This shall be quite sufficient for an artistic visual representation. Say, let's change to stonework. Double-click, and the entire covering is totally redefined both in the internal visualization mechanism and in Sign Render as well. Press OK, and we instantly may see how our 3D model has changed. That's all. Check out our new lessons. Bye everyone!